Don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and leave your thoughts in the comments below. This is my story, one I never thought I'd share, but maybe someone out there needs to hear it. What happened to me changed everything I believed in about love, trust, and betrayal. So, here it goes. It started, as these things often do, with a feeling. Just a faint hum under the surface of everyday life, a dissonant note in the symphony I thought was my marriage. You know that feeling? When something's just off. Not enough to put your finger on, not enough to voice without sounding paranoid, but enough to make the hairs on the back of your neck prickle occasionally. For months, I've been pushing it down, blaming work stress, lack of sleep, anything but the unthinkable. My wife, Sarah, the woman I'd built a life with over 15 years, the woman I trusted implicitly. Well, trust was the bedrock of our relationship. Or so I believed. We had a comfortable life, nice house in the suburbs, two great kids who were just starting to navigate their teenage years, a golden retriever named Max who was arguably the most stable member of the household. From the outside, we were the picture of suburban bliss. We had our routines, family dinners, weekend soccer games, movie nights, the occasional planned date night to keep the spark alive. We communicated, or at least, I thought we did. We talked about the kids' schools, upcoming bills, vacation plans, whose turn it was to take Max for his walk. Looking back, maybe we talked around things more than about them. The deeper stuff, the vulnerabilities, the fears, maybe those got lost somewhere between the mortgage payments and the PDA meetings. Sarah had been a bit distant lately, more tired than usual, often glued to her phone. I chalked it up to her new project at work. She was a graphic designer, and deadlines could be brutal. She'd wave away my concerns, saying she was fine, just swamped. Sometimes she'd stay late, texting me that she was grabbing dinner with colleagues to brainstorm. I didn't question it. Why would I? This was Sarah, my partner, the co-captain of our ship. Doubting her felt like doubting myself, doubting the entire structure of the life we'd meticulously built together. We even had conversations about our future, about growing old together, maybe buying a small cabin by a lake once the kids were off to college. It all felt so solid, so real. We'd recently had a discussion about family planning, too. Our youngest was 13, and we'd long decided our family was complete. Sarah had been on birth control consistently since he was born, something we revisited periodically just to ensure we were still on the same page. Just a few months prior, during one of those check-ins, she'd reaffirmed it. Absolutely, she'd said, squeezing my hand across the kitchen table. 2 teenagers are more than enough chaos for one lifetime. Still on the pill, reliable as ever. That conversation stuck with me, a small anchor point of perceived honesty in the churning sea of unease that was slowly starting to form in my gut. It felt reassuring, a confirmation that we were still aligned, still planning the same future. Little did I know that conversation was just another layer of the elaborate deception she was weaving. The unease grew, though, subtly. Little things started to add up. The passcode on her phone, which she'd never used before. The way she'd angle the screen away when a notification popped up. The hushed phone call she'd take out on the patio, ending abruptly if I walked out. The increased number of work dinners or girls' nights. Each instance was explainable on its own, easily brushed aside. But together, they formed a pattern, a mosaic of secrecy that my subconscious was screaming at me to acknowledge. I remember one evening, she came home late, smelling faintly of a cologne that wasn't mine. She claimed she'd hugged a male colleague goodbye. I let it go. What else could I do? Accuse her based on a whiff of sandalwood? I felt pathetic even considering it. But the seed of doubt, once planted, had taken root. It was a nasty, invasive weed, slowly choking the life out of the trust I'd so carefully cultivated for 15 years. I started paying closer attention, not out of suspicion initially, but more out of a desperate need to prove my own fears wrong, to reassure myself that the foundation of my life wasn't crumbling beneath my feet. I wanted to find evidence of her faithfulness, not her betrayal. I wanted to laugh at myself for being so insecure. But the more I looked, the less reassured I became. The late nights became more frequent, her explanations vaguer. The distance between us grew, an invisible chasm filled with unspoken words and growing anxiety. The symphony of our marriage was becoming increasingly discordant, and that faint hum of wrongness was building into a roar I could no longer ignore. The breaking point was coming. I just didn't know how devastating it would truly be. The dam finally broke on a Tuesday. Tuesdays were usually mundane. Work, pick up kids from practice, dinner, maybe watch some TV. But this Tuesday felt different from the moment I woke up. There was a tension in the air, thick and suffocating. Sarah had left early, claiming an important breakfast meeting. I went through the motions of my day, that gnawing feeling in my gut intensifying with each passing hour. I couldn't focus at work, my mind replaying snippets of conversations, analyzing her recent behavior, searching for clues I might have missed. I decided to leave work a bit early, hoping to catch her at home, maybe have a real conversation, try to bridge the widening gap between us. Our daughter, Emily, had forgotten her soccer cleats, so I swung by the house mid-afternoon to grab them before heading to her practice. The house was quiet when I let myself in. Max greeted me with his usual tail-wagging enthusiasm, blissfully unaware of the storm brewing. I headed upstairs to Emily's room, grabbed the cleats, and was on my way back down when I heard it, faint voices coming from our bedroom. My heart hammered against my ribs. Sarah wasn't supposed to be home. Her meeting, then lunch, then supposedly back-to-back afternoon sessions. I crept towards the closed bedroom door, my breath catching in my throat. The voices became clearer. It was Sarah, her tone low, intimate, punctuated by soft laughter. And then, a man's voice, deeper, unfamiliar, bile rose in my throat. Every paranoid thought, every dismissed suspicion, crashed down on me with the force of a physical blow. I stood there, frozen, feet rooted to the spot outside the door of my own bedroom, listening to my wife betray me. I couldn't make out all the words, just fragments. So much better than last time. Have to be careful, he almost. Can't wait until we can. Each snippet was a dagger twisting in my gut. The casual intimacy, the shared secrets, it was sickening. I wanted to burst in, to scream, to demand answers. But another part of me, a colder, more detached part, took over. I needed proof. I needed to know who this was, how long it had been going on. Slowly, deliberately, I backed away from the door, my movements wooden. I slipped back downstairs, my mind racing. Max whined softly, sensing my distress. I grabbed the cleats, my hand trembling so badly I could barely hold them. I needed to get out, to think, to process. But as I reached the front door, I saw her car keys on the entryway table. She hadn't taken her car, which meant she was still here. And so was he. How had they gotten here? Had he picked her up? Had they come back together after her meetings? The timeline didn't matter as much as the crushing reality. My house, our family home, the sanctuary I thought we shared, had been violated. I forced myself to walk out the door, get in my car, and drive away. I delivered the cleats to Emily, pasting on a smile that felt like cracking plaster, my voice sounding hollow and distant even to my own ears. Sitting in the car park afterwards, the full weight of it hit me. 15 years. 15 years of shared history, of building a life, raising children, weathering storms together. Was it all a lie? How long had this been happening? Who was he? Was it someone I knew? The questions swirled, unanswered, each one more painful than the last. The image of Sarah with another man, in our bed, the bed where our children were conceived, the bed where we whispered dreams and fears in the dark, it was unbearable. I felt a blinding rage mixed with a profound, soul-crushing sadness. My world had tilted on its axis, and I didn't know which way was up anymore. I drove around aimlessly for hours, the city lights blurring through tears I couldn't stop. I ended up parked by the lake where Sarah and I used to walk, back when things were simpler, or at least, when I thought they were. The betrayal felt absolute. A complete shattering of the reality I had inhabited just hours before. This wasn't just infidelity, it felt like an erasure of our shared past, a mockery of everything I held dear. The initial shock was starting to wear off, replaced by a cold, hard certainty. I couldn't unhear what I'd heard. I couldn't unsee the betrayal in my mind's eye. The life I knew was over. The question now was, what came next? The immediate instinct was confrontation, raw and explosive. But that detached part of me, the part that had pulled me away from the bedroom door, whispered caution. I needed more than just overheard whispers. I needed undeniable proof, not just for myself, but for the inevitable, messy fallout that was sure to come. The ride home that night was the longest of my life. Walking back into that house, knowing what had happened within its walls, felt like swallowing shards of glass. Sarah was there, acting completely normal, asking about my day, complaining about her exhausting meetings. The charade was almost perfect, chillingly so. And as I looked at her, forcing myself to meet her eyes, I felt a profound sense of loss, not just for the marriage, but for the woman I thought I knew. She was a stranger now, hiding behind a familiar face. The fight was just beginning, but the first, most devastating blow had already landed. The days following the discovery were a blur of forced normalcy and silent agony. I moved through our life like a ghost, participating in family dinners, helping with homework, walking the dog, all while carrying this massive, festering secret. Every interaction with Sarah was torture. Her casual touches felt like burns, her smiles seemed like leers, her questions about my quietness felt like calculated probes into my cracking facade. Sleep offered little escape, my dreams filled with distorted images of whispers behind closed doors and unfamiliar cologne. I was functioning on autopilot, fueled by caffeine and a simmering rage I kept tightly bottled up. I knew I needed concrete proof, something irrefutable. Listening outside the door wasn't enough, especially if I wanted to protect myself and my kids in the inevitable divorce. The thought of divorce itself was a heavy weight, a failure I hadn't anticipated, but the betrayal had severed something vital, something I knew couldn't be repaired. My initial plan was simple, if soul-crushing: hire a private investigator. But something held me back. It felt too impersonal, too clinical for something that felt so deeply personal, so devastatingly intimate. Plus, the cost was a factor. More than that, though, a darker thought began to form. I needed to understand the extent of the deception myself. I needed to see it with my own eyes. Technology, ironically, became my unwilling accomplice. We had a shared family cloud account for photos and backups. I rarely logged into the web interface, usually just letting my phone sync automatically. One sleepless night, around 3 a.m., driven by a desperate need for answers, I logged in from my laptop. I scrolled through recent photo backups, mostly innocuous pictures of the kids, Max, scenery from Sarah's phone. Then I checked the synced data folders, documents, backups from apps. Tucked away in a seemingly random folder, synced from her phone's notes app, was a note simply titled Logistics. My blood ran cold. With trembling fingers, I clicked it open. It wasn't work logistics. It was a detailed accounting of meetups, times, locations, hotel rooms, borrowed apartments, even times listed as home, clear, that corresponded with days I was traveling for work or the kids were at sleepovers. There were names, only initials, JD, date stretching back nearly 8 months. 8 months of meticulously planned deception, right under my nose, documented like a project timeline. I felt physically ill, leaning back from the screen, gasping for air. But the worst was yet to come. Further down in the note, under a section cryptically labeled Plan B, were dates and notes that made no sense at first. Stop P. May 15th. OV window June 10th to 15th. Tell JD, accident, late June. Timing crucial. Needs to seem plausible post D. P. D? It took me a moment, my mind numb with shock, to connect the dots. P was pill. Birth control. The conversation we'd had, Her reassurances, all lies. She hadn't just been cheating. She'd stopped taking her birth control. But why? The note spelled it out with chilling clarity. She wasn't trying to get pregnant with my child. The JD was the target. She was planning to get pregnant by her affair partner, pass it off as an accident, likely hoping to secure him, perhaps thinking it would force his hand if he was married or reluctant to leave his own situation. The post-D likely meant post-divorce, my divorce. She was planning to blow up our lives and immediately trap her lover with a pregnancy conceived while still married to me. The sheer, calculated cruelty of it knocked the wind out of me. This wasn't just a betrayal born of passion or weakness. This was a cold, premeditated plot to manipulate and trap another person, using a potential child as leverage, all while systematically deceiving me and destroying our family. The discovery of the affair had wounded me. This discovery shattered me into a million pieces. The woman I loved, the mother of my children, was capable of a level of manipulation I couldn't fathom. She wasn't just unfaithful, she was dangerous. That night, the grief and rage solidified into something else, a steely resolve. My focus shifted. This wasn't just about ending the marriage anymore. This was about exposing her, about ensuring her scheme didn't succeed, about protecting myself, and, strangely enough, even about warning this JD, whoever he was, about the trap he was walking into. He was part of the betrayal, yes, but nobody deserved to be manipulated like that. The immediate aftermath was internal. I saved copies of the note, screenshots, saved the file to a secure drive, emailed it to a private account. This was the proof I needed, far more damning than any photo of them checking into a hotel. It revealed her character, her intent. I started quietly consulting with a divorce lawyer, explaining the situation in broad strokes at first, then revealing the full extent of the deception, including the birth control plot. My lawyer, a seasoned professional who'd seen her share of messy divorces, was visibly taken aback. She advised caution strategy. Confrontation needed to happen, but on my terms, when I was ready, armed with the evidence. The practical steps felt surreal, discussing asset division, custody arrangements, legal strategies, while still living under the same roof, pretending everything was fine. The emotional toll was immense. I felt hollowed out, functioning purely on adrenaline and the grim determination to see this through. The love I'd felt for Sarah curdled into a mixture of contempt and a strange sort of pity for the person she'd become. The trust wasn't just broken, it was annihilated, vaporized. I looked at my kids, trying to shield them from the toxic undercurrents they couldn't possibly understand, and felt an overwhelming wave of protective fury. She wouldn't just destroy my life, she was gambling with theirs too. The game had changed. This was no longer just about heartbreak. It was about survival and ensuring justice, in whatever form that might take, was served. The confrontation wasn't a single, explosive event. It played out over several days, a slow, agonizing reveal that peeled back the layers of deceit one by one. I chose my moment carefully. It was a Saturday afternoon. The kids were at their grandparents' for the weekend, a prearranged visit that suddenly felt like a blessing, a necessary buffer zone. The house felt unnaturally quiet, amplifying the tension that had been simmering for weeks. Sarah was in the living room, scrolling through her phone, looking relaxed, oblivious. That casualness, that utter lack of remorse or awareness, fueled the cold fire in my belly. I started calmly, perhaps too calmly. "Sarah, we need to talk." She looked up, a flicker of annoyance in her eyes at being interrupted. "Can it wait? I'm just trying to unwind." "No," I said, my voice level but firm. "It can't." I sat down opposite her, placing my own phone face down on the coffee table. "I know, Sarah." Her brow furrowed slightly. "Know what?" The performance began. The feigned ignorance, the wide-eyed confusion. It was almost impressive, in a horrifying way. "I know about JD," I said, watching her face closely. The color drained from her cheeks. Just a slight tightening around her mouth, a barely perceptible widening of her eyes, but I saw it. The first crack in the facade. I, I don't know what you're talking about, she stammered, but the conviction wasn't there. I didn't raise my voice. I just laid it out, piece by piece. The overheard conversation outside our bedroom door. The late nights. The vague excuses. The cologne. I watched her crumble internally, her defenses trying desperately to hold. She tried deflection first. Are you spying on me? Have you been going through my things? This is insane. Then came minimization. Okay. Yes, I've become friends with someone from work. John Davis. We grab coffee sometimes. You're blowing this way out of proportion. John Davis. JD. At least I had a name now. Friends. I countered, the calmness finally starting to fray. Friends who meet in hotel rooms? Friends who you talk about being careful with, so I don't find out? Friends you spend time with in our house, in our bed, when I'm away? Her face went pale. She opened her mouth, then closed it again. Tears started to well up, crocodile tears, I suspected. It just happened, she whispered. I didn't mean for it to. I've been so unhappy, so lonely. The classic cheater's script. Blame the betrayed spouse. Rewrite history to justify the affair. I wasn't buying it. Unhappy? Lonely? Was that before or after you started meticulously planning meetups in your phone notes? I saw genuine shock on her face then. She hadn't expected me to know about the note. How? It doesn't matter how, Sarah. What matters is the truth. 8 months. You've been lying to me, betraying our family for 8 months. She finally broke then, sobbing, admitting to the affair, pleading that it was a mistake, that she loved me, that we could fix this. It was a performance designed to elicit sympathy, to regain control. But I knew what she was truly capable of. I let her cry for a moment, the sound grating on my raw nerves. Then, I delivered the final blow. And when exactly did you plan to tell me about Plan B? She froze mid-sob, her eyes snapping up to meet mine, filled with a mixture of terror and disbelief. What? What are you talking about? Plan B. I repeated, my voice dropping, filled with the contempt I could no longer contain. Stopping your birth control in May. Timing your OV window, with JD planning to tell him it was an accident sometime soon. Hoping to trap him with a baby conceived while you were still married to me. Planning to spring it on him after our divorce. Complete silence. The air crackled. Her face was sheet white, her expression utterly exposed. There was no confusion, no denial left. Just the stark, ugly truth hanging between us. She stared at me, speechless, horrified that her deepest, most calculated secret was out. You didn't just cheat, Sarah, I said, the words tasting like ash. You plotted. You manipulated. You were willing to use a potential child as a weapon, blow up our family, and trap another person, all without a second thought for the devastation you'd cause. She finally found her voice, but it was shaky, desperate. It wasn't like that. I was confused. I thought, maybe if what? I shot back. Maybe if you got pregnant by him, he'd leave his wife? Did you even know if he has a wife? Or was this just a Hail Mary pass to secure your next life before you'd even ended this one? Her silence was answer enough. The confrontation left me feeling drained, but strangely clear-headed. Seeing her stripped of her lies, her manipulation laid bare, solidified my resolve. There would be no reconciliation, no therapy, no second chances. The damage was too deep, the betrayal too fundamental. My lawyer had advised against revealing everything at once, but I couldn't hold back. Seeing her true nature was crucial for me to move forward. The next step wasn't just divorce. It was ensuring her plan failed, and that JD knew exactly what kind of person he was involved with. My revenge wouldn't be about causing pain for its own sake, but about exposing the truth, preventing further harm, and achieving a form of justice. I started gathering everything: the note, timelines, communication records my lawyer advised retrieving legally. I needed to find John Davis. A quick search based on her work context revealed him easily enough. A senior manager in a related department, married, with young kids. The pieces clicked into place. Her plan was even more monstrous than I initially realized. She wasn't just trapping a lover. She was aiming to destroy another family in the process. The path forward was clear, albeit fraught with potential complications. I needed to inform John Davis, not out of spite, but as a warning. And I needed to ensure Sarah faced the consequences of her actions, both legally and socially. The quiet suburban life was over. A messy, painful war was about to begin, but for the first time since that Tuesday afternoon, I felt like I was no longer just a victim. I had a plan. Executing the plan required a level of calculation I didn't know I possessed. It felt alien, navigating this murky territory of strategic reveals and controlled information, but Sarah's actions had forced my hand. My primary goal wasn't petty vengeance. It was truth and consequence. She had built a carefully constructed narrative of victimhood and mistakes, and I intended to dismantle it with cold, hard facts. The first step was contacting John Davis, or JD. This was the most delicate part. I didn't want a confrontation. I wanted to deliver information, a warning shot across the bow. My lawyer strongly advised against direct contact, suggesting it could muddy the waters legally. Instead, we opted for an indirect, deniable route initially. Through some discreet digging online, professional networking sites, company directories, I found his work email and, more importantly, gleaned enough information to confirm he was indeed married with children, just as I suspected. The thought of his wife, blissfully unaware, much like I had been, spurred me on. She deserved to know the truth, but revealing it directly myself felt wrong, potentially positioning me as vindictive. I decided the first move was to let JD know that I knew everything, not just about the affair, but about Plan B. I drafted a simple, anonymous email using a secure, untraceable service. It contained no threats, no accusations, just a few key phrases lifted directly from Sarah's logistics note. Plan B initiated. Stopped P, May 15th. OV window June 10th to 15th. Timing crucial post D. I added a simple closing line. She thinks you don't know the real plan. Be careful. I sent it to his work email, knowing it was a gamble. He might dismiss it, or it might plant a seed of doubt, forcing him to question Sarah's motives. The effect was almost immediate. Within a couple of days, the atmosphere at home shifted. Sarah, who had been alternating between pleading apologies and sullen silence since our confrontation, became visibly anxious, jumpy whenever her phone buzzed. She started asking veiled questions about JD, trying to gauge if I'd contacted him. I remained noncommittal, letting her stew in her uncertainty. The next phase involved our social circle and families. Sarah had always cultivated an image of the perfect wife and mother. I knew revealing the affair would be shocking enough, but exposing the calculated pregnancy plot was essential to show the depth of her deception. Again, direct confrontation wasn't the strategy. Instead, I focused on controlled disclosure during the divorce proceedings. When it came time to file, my lawyer included carefully worded references to Sarah's infidelity and cited behavior demonstrating extreme duplicity and manipulation, hinting at more without explicitly detailing the pregnancy plot in the initial filings that would come later, if necessary, presented as evidence. However, word travels fast. We informed our parents first. My parents were heartbroken but supportive. Sarah's parents were initially defensive, inclined to believe her tearful, edited version of events, a regrettable affair born of loneliness. That's when I presented them, calmly and privately, with a copy of the logistics note. Watching their faces shift from defense to dawning horror was gut-wrenching, but necessary. They needed to understand the daughter they thought they knew was capable of such actions. The fallout within our social circle was more gradual. As news of the separation spread, Sarah naturally tried to spin the narrative. I didn't engage in public mudslinging. Instead, when close friends asked, I shared the truth, calmly and factually, sometimes showing them the evidence if their loyalty to Sarah blinded them. The key was letting the facts speak for themselves. The pregnancy plot was the detail that shifted opinions dramatically. People could, perhaps, understand or forgive an affair. But the cold, calculated plan to trap her lover with a child conceived under false pretenses? That crossed a line for almost everyone. Friends distanced themselves from her. Invitations dried up. Her carefully curated world began to crumble, not because I actively destroyed it, but because her own actions, once exposed, were indefensible. Meanwhile, the situation with JD escalated, though indirectly. I never received a direct reply to the anonymous email. However, mutual acquaintances at their workplace started whispering about tension between Sarah and JD. Apparently, he had become distant, paranoid, questioning her constantly. The anonymous email had clearly hit its mark, sowing discord and suspicion. He likely confronted her, and her inability to explain how Plan B details leaked probably shattered whatever trust existed between them. The affair, built on lies and secrecy, couldn't withstand the harsh light of exposed manipulation. I heard through the grapevine months later that JD and his wife were in counseling, attempting to salvage their marriage after he confessed. He never faced any direct revenge from me, but the exposure of Sarah's plan likely forced a reckoning in his own life. My focus remained on the divorce, securing fair custody arrangements for the kids, and ensuring a financial settlement that reflected Sarah's destructive actions. The evidence of her planned deception, particularly the financial and emotional implications of the pregnancy plot had she succeeded, played a significant role in the negotiations. My lawyer used it strategically, not to punish, but to demonstrate her lack of judgment and potential instability, which ultimately influenced custody decisions and asset division in my favor. It wasn't a loud, explosive revenge, but a quiet, systematic dismantling of her lies and manipulations. It was about ensuring the truth prevailed and that she faced the natural consequences of her choices. Seeing her stripped of her manufactured image, isolated by the truth of her actions, felt like justice. It wasn't satisfying in a celebratory way, more like the grim satisfaction of closing a painful, infected wound. The poison she had injected into my life, into our family, was being drawn out, leaving scars, but allowing healing to finally begin. Looking back now, a couple of years down the line, life is drastically different. The dust has settled, the divorce is finalized, and a new kind of normal has emerged. Is it the life I envisioned 15, 10, or even 3 years ago? Not even close. But it's real, it's honest, and it's mine. The revenge, if you can call it that, wasn't about inflicting pain equal to what I suffered. It was about reclaiming control, exposing the truth, and preventing Sarah's destructive plan from succeeding and harming even more people, potentially an innocent child, JD's wife and kids, my own children. Seeing her carefully constructed world dissolve under the weight of her own actions brought a sense of grim closure, but not happiness. There's no real joy in witnessing the self-destruction of someone you once loved, the mother of your children, even when they've betrayed you so profoundly. The primary feeling was relief, relief that the truth was out, relief that the manipulation was stopped, relief that I could finally start breathing again without the crushing weight of her secrets. The divorce was finalized relatively quickly once the full scope of Sarah's actions became undeniable. The evidence, particularly the logistics note detailing the pregnancy plot, left her with little leverage. We agreed on joint custody, but with specific stipulations reflecting the court's concern about her judgment, giving me slightly more decision-making power regarding the kids' welfare. Financially, the settlement was favorable to me, acknowledging the calculated nature of her actions leading up to the separation. She had to sell the house, the one where she betrayed our marriage vows. Seeing the for sale sign go up was a strange mix of sadness for the lost memories and validation that this chapter was truly closing. Sarah's life changed dramatically. Most of our mutual friends faded away from her. Her relationship with her parents remained strained. They support her materially but struggle with the person she revealed herself to be. She left her job shortly after the rumors about her and JD, coupled with the whispers about her plan, made the environment untenable. Last I heard, she moved to a different city, trying to start over. I have minimal contact with her, only communicating about the kids through a co-parenting app, keeping things factual and brief. The affair with JD imploded spectacularly, as expected. His marriage apparently survived, though I imagine it scarred. I feel no particular sympathy for him. He made his choices, but I'm glad his wife and kids got the truth, allowing them to make their own informed decisions. As for me, the healing process has been long and complex. There were months of anger, grief, and profound disillusionment. Trusting anyone, especially romantically, felt impossible for a long time. I threw myself into work, into being the best dad I could be, trying to provide stability and love for my kids amidst the chaos their mother had created. Therapy was crucial. Talking it through, unpacking the layers of betrayal, understanding that her actions were about her flaws, her choices, not my deficiencies, was essential. Learning to forgive wasn't about excusing her behavior, but about releasing myself from the poison of resentment that was eating away at me. It's an ongoing process. Some days are better than others. There are still moments, triggers, a song, a place, seeing a couple who reminds me of how we used to be, that bring a pang of sadness for the life I thought I had. But those moments are fewer now. I learned some hard lessons. That love and history aren't guarantees against betrayal. That people you think you know intimately can hide unfathomable depths of deception. That sometimes, the only way out is through, even when the path is excruciating. But I also learned I'm stronger than I thought. I survived something that felt unsurvivable. I protected my children. I stood up for the truth, even when it was ugly and painful. I navigated the legal system, managed the emotional fallout, and slowly, piece by piece, rebuild a life. It's a simpler life now, quieter perhaps. My focus is clear. My kids, my well-being, finding peace. I'm cautiously starting to date again, but with my eyes wide open, valuing honesty and integrity above all else. The scars remain, they always will, but they are reminders of what I overcame, not symbols of defeat. I didn't get the fairy tale ending, but I got something more valuable: authenticity, resilience, and a second chance at a life built on truth, not illusion. Looking back, I realize I lost a part of myself, but I also found something stronger. If you've ever been betrayed, know this: you're not alone, and healing is possible. Thank you for listening to my story. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more real stories like this one. Until next time, take care of yourself.